of the speech and from the sort of analysis which we make here this morning. As you could see, I have here on the high table colleagues of mine who are equally placed to answer some of the questions which I'm sure you are here to ask. So I go into the speech. I go into the analysis, as it were. It's all right. Yes. May I welcome you all to this press briefing, which is designed to provide for you the details of the 1991 budget of Lagos State, as announced by the State Governor, Col Raji Razak, on Thursday, 10th of January 1991. The second purpose of the briefing is to answer your questions, which may arise out of the budget speech of the military governor or from today's briefing. At the end of the day, we believe we will have provided the necessary clarification, explanation, expatiation, and the rationale behind our program and activities for the 1991 budget year and as contained in the budget speech. In the mind of everybody here present as to what we intend to do for the people of this state in 1991. The emphasis of this briefing is to flesh the summary figures mentioned in the budget speech, and it's not to engage in another round of policy discourse, which you will agree with me has been thoroughly covered in the marathon speech of the military governor. We will of course answer your questions in all areas mentioned in the budget. In line with the format of the budget speech, I would like to start with the details of the budget performance in 1990. Review of 1990 budget. The revenue performance in 1990 had been very satisfactory in comparison with the budget estimates for that year and the actual collection in 1989. For instance, we budgeted for the sum of 1,313 million naira for 1989, while our actual collection was 1,504 million naira, thereby realizing 191 million naira more than our expectation. The percentage performance was 114.5%. The sectoral breakdown is given in Table 1. I have the Table 1 here with me. I will come to it later. It is important to add that the high performance of the ordinary revenue was due to improvement from two principal sources, that is, taxes and statutory allocation. Though non-tax revenue was below the target set for 1990, actual collection in that year rose from 266 million naira to 350 million naira in 1990. Here I have Table 1 here. I will just give the details there. Taxes, the budget figure was 427.18 million naira. The actual collected, which is still provisional, was 458.5 million naira. There's a variance of a positive variance of 31 million naira, and the percentage performance was 107.3 million naira. Sorry, 107.3%. Non-taxes, the budget was 464.05 million naira. Actual performance, provisional, again 314.94 million naira. The variance there was 109. We have a negative variance of 109 million naira. In other words, we did not perform as much as we expected in areas of non-taxes. These are fines and fees, licenses, reimbursements, and so on. The performance level was only 67.8%. Statutory allocation, we budgeted for 422.09 million naira. The actual collection for the year was 730.9 million naira. There was a positive variance of 173.2 million naira. I don't have the percentage here, but the percentage performance will be about 73%. Sorry, 173%. On the whole, if you add all the revenue together, the budget, as I mentioned earlier on, was 1,303.3 million naira, and the aggregate actual was 1,504.4 million naira. And the variance, as I mentioned earlier, again was 191.1 million naira, positive variance. We had 191 million naira above the budget. The performance was 114.5%. Table 1 above portrays the performance of the major revenue divisions vis-a-vis the target for the year. As highlighted above, both taxes and statutory allocation accounted for the big achievement in the ordinary revenue of the state. Notable area of improvement in taxes, that is, areas where we collected more money than budgeted for in the area of taxes, personal income tax payee, sales tax, tax on dividend, stamp duties, and withholding tax on interest on bank deposits. The relative performance in 1990 of those areas is shown in Table 2, which I'm reading below. Personal income tax payee, we had a budget of 230 million naira. Our actual performance, actual collection was 263 million naira. Sales tax, budget of 55 million naira. Performance, 65 million naira. Tax on dividend, we budgeted for 30 million naira. We collected 32 million naira. Stamp duties, 7 million naira. Collection, 8.5 million naira. Withholding tax on interest on bank deposit, the budget was 25 million naira. The actual collection was 50 million naira. The significance of Table 2 above is that we have continued to increase tax collection from traditional sources such as payee, while satisfactory progress is also being made in new areas such as sales tax and withholding tax on interest on bank deposits. Our expectation in the area of interest on bank deposits is very high in the coming year, with the establishment of more banks and expected high compliance rate by banks that have hitherto failed to remit these funds, this withholding tax to the state government. The above gains in tax revenue notwithstanding, the state government is confronted with many problems, especially in direct assessment, due to the following reasons. One, inability of the government to effectively monitor taxpayers who at various times employ evasive means such as wrong homes and business addresses to evade taxation. Two, non-documentation of statistics on taxpayers as well as false declaration of incomes. And thirdly, inadequate enforcement of tax laws. These are the reasons why we've not been able sufficiently to perform better than we did, say, in 1990. The state government is, however, exploring ways of addressing these problems so as to minimize tax evasion or tax avoidance in future. The non-tax sources of revenue have been an area of concern to the state government due to perennial low performance in relation to the annual budget. The main traditional sources of domestic revenue are post betting and licenses, land charges, and fees associated with motor vehicles, such as driving license fees, vehicle licenses, etc. In aggregate terms, revenue realized from domestic sources in 1990 was based on the assumption that the newly introduced user charges will be vigorously pursued by government agencies. However, our expectations have not been fully realized. Ministries, departments and other agencies of government which were charged with non-tax revenue collection had not performed fully well, and they've complained of inadequate vehicles and other wherewithals necessary for revenue collection. Most of the complaints of the ministries and other agencies will be addressed in the course of 1991. I have table 3 here, which will soon be available to you. Performance of the major items of domestic revenue for 1990 vis-a-vis the target. As shown in the table, contribution from licenses was above target, while the main area of disappointment was in respect of earnings and sales, which only recorded a 64% performance. The table here, table 3, shows the budget and the actual performance of those areas in non-tax revenue, which I should mention, and which I will now mention. Fines and fees, the budget was 121.3 million naira. Provisional actual for the year 1990 was 108, where we had a negative variance of 12.8 million naira. Percentage performance 89%. Licenses, we budgeted for 21.8 million naira. The collection was 27.7 million naira. A negative or adverse variance of just under 6 million naira. The budget was 21.8 million naira. The actual was 27.6, so it's a positive variance of 6 million naira, and the performance was 127.17%. Earnings and sales, we budgeted for 169.02 million naira. The collection was 108.3 million naira. In that one, we had a negative variance of 60 million naira. The percentage was only 64%. Rent on government properties, we budgeted for 960,000 naira. We collected 841,000 naira. The negative performance was only 146,000 naira. The percentage performance was 87.6. Interest payments, interest on our deposits and so on, we budgeted 9.7. The collection was 4.9. Adverse variance 4.7. Performance 51%. Reimbursement, we budgeted 140.6 million naira. The amount collected was 92.1 naira. Adverse variance 43 million naira. Performance 65%. Miscellaneous items, we budgeted for 622,000 naira. Performance 1.8 million naira. Positive variance 1.2. Performance 298%. In respect of our revenue in general, we have performed better than the target set for 1990 and collected considerably more money than the corresponding period in 1989. Performance 1990. We budgeted to spend a total of 825.5 million naira, made up of 447.2 million naira for personnel costs, and 378.3 million naira as overhead costs. Our actual total recurrent expenditure was 812.3 million naira, that is 13.2 million naira below the target we budgeted for, below the target for the year. In respect of personnel costs, we spent a total of 423.8 million naira. Though the amount was 94.6% of the budget for 1990, it was considerably more than the actual figure for 1989, when 288.37 million naira was spent. In other words, personnel costs went up by 134.7 million naira, or 46.7% between 1989 and 1990. The reasons for this major increase were: 1, mass promotion in the state civil service during the year, annual salary increment, and the recruitment of additional teachers for our schools. Overhead expenses also went up considerably, from a budget provision of 378.3 million naira to an actual expenditure of 389.2 million naira. Compared with 1989, overhead cost expenses was more than doubled. Actual performance was 218%, due largely to inflation and expansion of government activities. Tight control of the cost of administration will be put in force in 1991 in view of the above picture of escalating overhead costs, so that we do not devote an increasing proportion of our budgetary resources to recurrent expenses to the detriment of our capital programs and projects. Capital receipts for 1990. The table below provides the details of the capital receipts for 1990, which was used for funding our capital projects. I read the table very quickly. Under capital receipts, we expected to collect 356.47 million naira from recurrent budget surplus. The actual amount we saved or we collected from the ordinary revenue head was 605.6 million naira. That is a positive variance of 249.14 million naira, or a performance of 169.9%. Internal loan, we expected to raise 114.1 million naira. Actual collection was 201.3 million naira. That is, actual loan we actually raised was 201.3 million naira. We had a positive variance of 87.2 million naira, and the performance was 176.42%. External loan, we didn't budget for anything, and we didn't collect anything. That is, those external loans which were expected in the budget. Grants and reimbursements, we budgeted for a total of 105 million naira. Actual collection was 75.26 million naira. Variance, we had a negative variance of 29.7 million naira, and therefore the performance was just 71% of target. Total capital receipts, the budget was 575.57 million naira. The actual collection for January to December 1990 was 882.17 million naira. In other words, we had a variance of 306 million naira. Percentage performance was 153.26 million naira. We budgeted for 575.57 million naira, but achieved a total collection of 822.17 million naira, or 153% of target. Largely from a larger sum of recurrent surplus and internal loan which were received during the year. We also called back 66.37 million naira from the 1989 Stabilization Fund, and we received 8.9 million naira from the federal government for the dual status of Lagos State. The high level of internal loan which we raised in that year was attributed to the sum of 150 million naira which we received from the federal government for the World Bank assisted water project. We have also drawn down on the balance of commercial loans negotiated during the year. Our performance in both ordinary revenue and, by extension, the capital receipts have been fairly satisfactory. However, we intend to continue to build upon our current performances so as to meet the challenges of the future. 1990 capital expenditure performance. In 1990 fiscal year, our capital budget performance was 913.87 million naira and exceeded our target of 575.4 million naira by 60%. When compared with the actual performance of 691.9 million naira in 1989, there was an increase of 221.9 million naira in expenditure in 1990. That is, there was an increase of 32%. The military governor had given the sectoral breakdown in his budget speech. The high quantum of financial and physical achievements which we had in 1990 were attributable to the deliberate policy of government to sustain a high level of physical and quantitative target during the year, which were commensurate with the needs and demand of the people of Lagos State. In fact, the physical achievements exceeded target in certain areas, such as road construction and rehabilitation, rural roads and rural electrification, the purchase of science and technical workshop equipment, World Bank assisted water and solid waste projects, and other special projects in social sector. Basically, these are the expansion programs for our tertiary institutions and our school systems as well. And of course, we exceeded expectation in the area of special expenditure. In terms of physical performance, the state government accomplished the execution on target of a substantial numbers of programs and projects. In the economic sector, the high performance that was achieved during the year were in the areas of ADP, that is our Agricultural Development Program, extension services, in the rural edifications programs, in the provision of street lights, in the construction of urban roads and bridges, and in the social sector, the projects we executed included the provision of science and technical workshop equipment, the classroom replacement program, upgrading and physical development of our hospitals, the procurement of drugs and medical equipment and medical consumables. The budget for 1991. Again, I will go over the main financial provisions as summarized in the military governor's speech. Here I will give the details. As highlighted by the military governor, the state government will spend a total of 2,000.98 million naira. We shorten it to 2,001 million naira. It is 2 billion naira, just 1 million naira above 2 billion naira during 1991 fiscal year for his services. The budget consists of a recurrent expenditure of 1,009.19 million naira and a capital expenditure of 991.79 million naira. The budget for 1991, when compared with the 1990 budget of 1,400.95 million naira, represent an increase of 600 million naira above 1990 budget, or 42.83%. Our 1991 budget has been prepared in accordance with the national guidelines as given by the Office of the Vice President, as well as the guidelines provided by the military governor, and the objectives of the state government as stated by the military governor have been able to underline and underpin all the various provisions we made in the 1991 budget. And some of these objectives can be summarized briefly as follows. That is the consolidation of mass-oriented programs and projects being implemented by this administration, particularly in areas previously neglected, and for communities too that were previously neglected. And secondly, to bring what one might call environmental cleanliness and sanity and orderly physical development back to Lagos. I think in a nutshell, these were the essence of the objective of the budget for 1991. As stated in the budget speech, the thrust of our programs and activities in the year can be summarized again as follows. Under revenue, we intend to increase internal revenue generation through intensification of collection from existing sources. 2, we intend to bring into focus tax areas that were previously neglected and marginally touched. 3, we are appealing to consumers to pay the commercial charges of our utilities like the Water Corporation and Waste Disposal Board. 4, we are appealing to our citizens to discharge their civic responsibilities by paying their taxes as and when due. Those are more or less the thrust in terms of revenue collection for 1991. In areas of recorded expenditure, We intend, of course, to pay the minimum wage as directed by Mr. President in his budget speech. We intend to provide sufficient funds for the running costs of government, ministries, departments, parastatals, and other agencies, in line with the relative level of inflation in the economy, as well as other expansion in government activities. 3, we will, as a government, of course, continue to maintain existing tight control measures in our recurrent expenses in order to minimize wasteful expenditure. 4, we intend to provide adequately for staff training and other staff welfare services. 5, we intend to provide adequately for servicing of our debts. Under capital receipts, the focus: A, ensure adequate recurrent surplus to fund capital projects and programs. B, expect substantial counterpart contribution from allottees of state land for the development of prime estates. C, we expect continued assistance from the federal government for the dual status of Lagos. Capital expenditure, our focus and the main thrust will be as follows: pursuit of transition program, completion of ongoing projects, particularly those that can be completed by September 1991. C, emphasis on social services, that is health, education, water supply, and social welfare projects. D, environmental cleanliness and orderly physical development of the state, which, as I mentioned, was one of the main objectives of our budget for this year. E, improvement in transportation and traffic decongestions in metropolitan Lagos. F, focus on agricultural and rural development, roads, bridges, and pedestrian crossings, urban renewal, etc. G, completion of World Bank assisted programs. H, infrastructural development of our prime estates. It should be stated that our capital programs are in consonance with the state component of the 1991-93 National Rolling Plan, particularly in terms of the structure and the relative priorities as detailed in the National Rolling Plan. Now I go to revenue generation for 1991. The total estimated ordinary revenue for 1991 fiscal year is, as I said earlier on, 2,006.58 million naira, as against 1,313.33 million naira estimated in 1990. This shows an increase of 693.25 million naira, or 52%, that is above the 1990 provision. Taxes are expected to bring in 515.65 million naira, or 25% of total revenue. Non-tax revenue is expected to yield 390.93 million naira, or 19.5%. And statutory allocation, we expect to collect 1.1 billion naira, or 54% of total estimated ordinary revenue. The breakdown of our revenue projection vis-a-vis 1990 budget and actuals for 1990, the breakdown is given in the table 4. In table 4 below. Well, I just quickly go through it. Taxes, we intend to collect 515.65 million naira. Fines and fees, we intend to collect 135.8 million naira. Earnings and sales, 170.8 million naira. Rents on government property, 1 million naira. Interest, repayments and dividends, 6.9 million naira. Reimbursement, 40 million naira. Miscellaneous item, 850,000 naira. Statutory allocation, as I said earlier on, 1.1 billion. Total ordinary revenue, 2,006 0.58 million naira. And we then compare it with what I said earlier on, compare with the estimates for 1990. Taxes will have gone up by over 400 million naira. And again, compare with the actual collection for 1990, the provision for taxes increases are moderate. That is, all the various areas of taxes, the expansion we expect are moderate. That is, we expect taxes to grow by 12.5%, which we believe is attainable in view of our performance in this field in the last couple of years. We've been going by higher rates than what we are now budgeting. By the time the activities of our Revenue Advisory Committee begin to bear fruit, and we are able to collect taxes from areas that were marginally tapped in the past, we are confident that we can even surpass the 1991 target, which I've just mentioned. The reduction in reimbursement, again, it's a pity you don't have the table, but we expect a reduction in the reimbursement in 1991 vis-a-vis what we provided for in 1990. The reduction in reimbursement is due to some changes in the primary education policy. Originally, we were collecting reimbursement, we were assisting the local governments to pay their own contributions of the primary school teachers, and we were accordingly reimbursed. Since there is now a change in that direction, that reimbursement, we are not budgeting for it in 1991. To this end, we have removed all the elements of reimbursements on primary education fund from both the local governments and the federal authorities. In our proposal, we have increased our projections for 1991 in areas where we have done well in the past. And we have also undertaken a review of the existing rates and fees to reflect the present-day realities of prices. Efforts will also be made to vigorously collect what we call user charges in the 1991 fiscal year. However, no new levies or taxes have been introduced by the state government. In his speech, the military governor has appealed to clients of both the Water Corporation and Waste Disposal Board, two agencies which have gone commercial in their operations, to pay the new charges as and when due, so that those agencies can improve their services of Lagos State. I believe that citizens of Lagos State will not hesitate to pay for potable water or have their refuse collected regularly, provided they can be assured of efficient and regular flow of water and refuse collection. The general managers of the two agencies are here with me to give you that assurance and also to appeal to you to pay your dues. Recurrent expenditure program for 1991. The total recurrent expenditure for 1991 is 1,009.19 million naira, which comprises of 419.57 million naira for personnel costs and 589.62 million naira as overhead costs. It is 183.66 million naira, or 22% above 1990 provision. The estimated personnel cost is however lower by 6.2% when compared with the provision for 1990. This is due to the transfer of primary education to the local governments. However, provision has been made for the implementation of the minimum wage as announced by Mr. President in his budget speech, and for promotion of deserving officers and employment of additional teachers by the Teaching Service Commission. Overhead costs 1991. The provision has increased from 378.32 million naira in 1990 to 589 million naira in this fiscal year. That is, this is an increase of nearly 56% in the provision for overhead costs. In the budget, the need to increase the various provisions in order to contain the effect of inflation. Consequently, there have been increases in provisions for debt servicing, increases in statutory allocation to local governments, subvention to parastatals and running costs of ministries, departments, as well as allocation to staff training and staff welfare. Some of the main items of overhead costs are shown in Annex 1, which we shall soon give to you. Capital receipts for 1991. As against the provision of 1,009 million naira for recurrent expenditure, the total revenue estimate of 2,006 million naira leaves a recurrent budget surplus of 796.7 million naira. This amount is transferred to the Capital Development Fund. Additional receipts totaling 199.3 million naira are expected from transfer from the Stabilization Fund of 60 million, utilization of the balance from our bond flotation for the development of Lekki Peninsula Scheme 1, 19.3 million naira, grants from federal government for the dual status of Lagos, 20 million naira, and the catapult contribution by allottees of prime estates, we expect 100 million naira in 1991. It is the intention of government to use the contribution of allottees exclusively for the infrastructural development of the estates. To this end, the collection is being, that is the revenue being collected from the allottees, is being put in a separate account. It should be noted that the total capital receipts have gone up by 73% when compared with those of 1990. The largest component being the recurrent budget surplus, which has increased by 123.5% over the last year figure. 1991 Capital Expenditure Program. With an expected capital receipts of 996.3 million naira for the 1991 fiscal year, the FCC total capital expenditure is 91.7 million naira, made up of core capital programs of 41.79 million naira and special expenditure of 50 million naira. The proposed capital expenditure for 1991 is 416.37 million naira, or 72.35% higher than the budget for 1990. However, when compared with the actual level of capital expenditure for 1990, that is 913.87 million naira, the FCC increase in 1991 is 77.9 million, or 8% above the actual performance for 1990. This is a moderate increase which we believe we can achieve and surpass if more funds is available. The 50 million naira allocated for special expenditure is partly to cater for the immediate needs of the incoming legislature and partly to be used for purchase of new vehicles and the sustenance of maintenance culture as regards government properties. It is worthy of note that our capital programs for 1991 will consume just under 50% of our budget for the year, unlike in the recent past when we had devoted lesser amounts. Table 4 below provides the subsector breakdown for our capital projects and programs which have been touched upon in the budget speech of the Ministry of Government. I have that table, how much we are spending on different sectors. Agriculture and rural development, 48.5 million naira. Livestock, 11.24 million naira. Fishery, forestry, 1 million. Fishery, 7.6 million naira. Manufacturing, 20 million naira. Power and street lighting, 13.5 million naira. Finance, commerce, tourism and cooperatives, 57.35 million naira. Transport, 138.5 million naira. Education, including higher institutions, 113.7 million naira. This is the capital. I'm giving you the capital breakdown for 1991, the only capital budget. Health, 68.25 million naira. Information services, 14.5. Social development, sports and culture, 69 million naira. Water resources and water supply, 96 million naira. Environmental, sewage and drainage 30 million naira, housing 20 million naira, town and country planning 150 million naira, community development 10E, general administration 82.7 million naira, special expenditure 50 million naira. Overall budget size. The estimated recurrent or ordinary revenue for 1991 is 2,006.58 million naira. We also expect capital receipts of 199.3 million naira, apart from the estimated recurrent surplus, which is expected to be transferred to the Capital Development Fund, along with other capital receipts. In effect, the total financial resources expected to be available to the state government is 2,205.88 million naira, that is 2.2 billion naira. Total resources mentioned above will be utilized as per item 2, 4, and 5 below. Okay, will be utilized as follows. Total budget size 2,001 million naira. Stabilization fund 200.66 million naira. Budget surplus 4.24 million naira. It is customary for government to announce its total expenditure size as its budget size, rather than in terms of the total resources inflow and the various uses to which those resources inflow may be put. That is why we've announced the budget of 2,001 million naira. Other funds will be put away as savings and as budget surplus. Table 8 below gives the sectoral details of the 1991 budget as compared with the 1990 budget and its changes therein. Table 9, again, which will provide, also gives the recurrent expenditure profile approved for the various ministries, departments, and other agencies of government that derive their fund from the state budget. Table 8 below here, I have the 1991 approved summary. Ordinary revenue 2,006.58, personnel cost 419.57 million, overhead cost 589.6 million naira, total recorded expenditure 1,009.19 million naira, transfer to stabilization 200.6 million naira, recorded surplus 796.7 million naira, other capital receipts 199.3 million naira, total capital receipts 996.03 million naira, special expenditure 50 million naira, core capital 41.8 million naira, total capital expenditure 91.79 million naira, overall budget size 2,000.98 million naira, budget surplus 4.24 million naira. We have attempted in this briefing to provide the details of the financial profile of the 1991 budget while using the 1989 and 1990 performances as our benchmark. We have not engaged in further exposition of the sectoral analysis because we believe that the military governor's speech had adequately covered sufficient grounds in these areas. The brief This brief cannot provide or anticipate all areas of concern to you. However, we believe all these areas will be properly addressed during the question time. We have placed before you the financial details of a bold strategy to continue the economic, social, and environmental development of Lagos State. We have shown, as in 1990, that given your support and your goodwill, this administration can achieve the set goals as proposed in the 1991 budget. I thank you for listening. Thank you very much. Sorry, we can't hear you. Sorry.
20 naira.
It has not been scrapped.
Do you know how much realized from 1990?
It has not been scrapped. It's still in force. under the conditions we mentioned last year, that is payable by all adults in the states that earn more than 3,000 naira. People are still paying. So far, in the 2 years that we've operated the development levy, we've collected over 50 million naira. And the money has been used essentially in executing social services. This year, we've used the money to tar the Ikeja General Hospital. If you go there now, you find the roads inside Ikeja General Hospital. The road network has been tapped, basically from the development levy. And I may take this opportunity to appeal to all the people of Lagos State to continue to assist government in this area by paying the development levy. There is a major need in the state for all forms of development. And the fact that we are asking you to pay this levy is to ingratiate in the minds of all our adults in Lagos State of the need to support government in its developmental efforts. And your contribution, as I said, is going a long way in enabling us to do certain things which we might not otherwise have been able to do. So please continue to give us the support in this area and continue to pay your development levy without being called upon to do so. It's make it voluntary. Come and pay regularly. Thank you.
What is the projection for this year as far as the development levy, special development levy? How much does the capable realize?
Ọlọ́run náà ń ṣe. Nítorí fẹ́ bèèrè èyí pé ẹni ká má fi owó omi lọ́ra. À ń sọ̀rọ̀ ẹ bá máa fi àwọn jẹ sí ìtẹ̀wọ̀n fún wa lónìí àárọ̀ ní tí níjọ́ méjì tàbí lómi ogójì kọ́rùn. Ẹ bá máa bẹ̀ wọ́n. Owó tẹ gbé bọ́ọ̀ta àwọn tẹ máa gbé fún ọlọ́jẹ́ kan lóore. Ìkan inú ẹ̀mí èkejì ẹ̀yin náà lè àwọn oníná ìjọba òkè ìjọba àṣàlẹ̀. Wàá jókòó báyìí wọ́n á rán lọ. Gbogbo ọ̀gá bára ó máa bàjẹ́ ni. Gbogbo nǹkan ló sì wọ́n yìí. Àwọn ìgbé ìjọba òkè ìjọba àṣàlẹ̀ ẹ̀ ń tíráyì. Àwọn abẹ̀kúnnù tẹ́lẹ̀ mẹ́ràn lọ́wọ́ ẹgbẹ́ máa bá wọn sọ̀rọ̀. Ètò bá jẹ́ tọ́ wa lẹ bá pè wá. Tí ò bá ṣe pé Adébọ́lá àjèlé tẹ́ ṣẹ̀ṣẹ̀ pé bẹ̀ ní ìdíwá. Torí wípé ẹgbẹ́ wà ní rédíò lẹ́rọ. Ibi ni yóò fọ́kú jù bẹ́ẹ̀ lọ. Tó bá pẹ̀ fún mi wè. Àmọ́ àkọ́kọ́ ló tẹ máa ṣe nígbà tọ̀tọ̀ náà dé bẹ́ẹ̀. Àwọn aláìbí kíláàsì àwọn alábẹ́ wọ́n ní alákọ̀ọ́rí lọ́wọ́ alákọ̀ọ́ra àwọn tó àmọ̀wé la bí ẹ̀yìn náà lè tún bí àwọn tó mọ̀wé ẹ jọ̀ọ́ ẹ bá máa ṣe nǹkan báyìí kì í ṣe pé àyè yìí kì í ṣe àṣòfò ẹ̀jẹ̀ bọ́bọ̀ òfẹ́ náà ẹlòmíì náà ní òbí jẹ́wọ́ láàrin ló ti sàn nígbà tí ayé gbogbo àdúgbò wa ọ̀sẹ̀ tó lọ́wọ́ lórí omi ìjọba nù ẹ̀yẹ̀ gbowó yín gbogbo oúnjẹ ẹ̀fẹ̀ náà ẹ̀yìn kábàámọ̀ àwọn ìjọba yẹ̀ ní kọ́ lọ àwọn náà ní ṣì náà àmọ́ ìkúndú yẹn pé ẹ̀tọ́jú wa o ẹ̀tí wá ní ọdún pàrọ̀ rédíò tẹlifíṣàn rédíò gbogbo ọkọ̀ wọn nínú.
ìyọ̀wé ẹ̀ ṣe púpọ̀ ẹ kú dìde náà ẹ ṣe chairman wa náà pẹ́ ọdún tó yẹn náà wà ó ẹ náà ṣe tẹwà lọ́dọ̀ wa tẹwà lẹ́gbẹ̀ẹ́ wa nípa ọ̀rọ̀ tómi tẹ wí yẹn ọ̀gá ilé àwọn olómi ó wà mí báyìí.
ṣe wípé ohun àwa láti má fún mi lórí mi mọ àdúgbò tẹ́ ń sọ ń pa ẹ̀gbọ́n.
àwọn ọmọ ọdún láti lọ́gbà ọdún wọlé ẹkún ọjọ́ ìbejì ní ọdún
ṣe rí gbogbo àwọn àdúgbò tí ẹnu báyẹn kì í ṣe pé ẹ̀yin náà ẹlẹ́tí kọ́ lẹ́tà sí wa rí. níjọba bẹ́ẹ̀ ni àti àti láwọn èèyàn wa tí wọ́n bá ìdánilò nínú lẹ́tà yẹn. wọ́n lè ti ṣàlàyé fún yín gbogbo wàhálà tó wà ní gbogbo àdúgbò yẹn nípa lọ́rọ̀ olómìnira. n tí a fẹ́ sọ fún yín wípé kì í ṣe gbogbo àdúgbò tí pipe wá dé nísìn ní omi lè dé nísìn. ìdí ẹ̀ nìyẹn tá a ṣe ń ṣe iṣẹ́ tá a ṣe lọ́wọ́ tó ń pè ní expansion program. tẹ́yìn ọba fojú wò ó ti lọ sí bí ọdún mẹ́sàn-án mẹ́wàá tí a ti ṣe tá a ti kọ́ àwọn water works tí à ń lò pàápàá ní àdúgbò tẹ̀ ń wò. lẹ́yìn yẹn ìgbà tó ó jẹ́ ní 1983-84 ni a ti ṣe development lórí water works ní jù bẹ́ẹ̀. nítorí ṣẹlẹ̀ sí ni pé omi ò tó fún gbogbo Èkó ìdí ẹ̀nìyẹn tí ìjọba lè ṣe ná gbogbo owó tó ń ná nísìn tóbi bá tó ní wọn nídìí láti ná gbogbo owó tó ń ná omi yẹn bí ẹni gbé láti lè kọ́ síbí kan ni ní ojoojúmọ́ làwọn èèyàn wá bá a tán fẹ́ connection ẹni tó ti rí garawa bíi mẹ́wàá mélòó kan lé ẹ̀tẹ̀lẹ̀ níbi ọdún márùn-ún sẹ́yìn n tó ń pọn nísìn wọ́n wá bá wa ní tẹ́lẹ̀tẹ́lẹ̀ lómi náà ṣe nǹkan kan ṣùgbọ́n aṣọ táwọn èèyàn wípé wọ́n ní sùúrù tó wá tó bí oṣù méjì mẹ́ta sí ìta wá sí àti bẹ̀rẹ̀ iṣẹ́ gbogbo àwọn páàsì ẹ̀ lọ́wọ́ àkọ́bí sí padà fún wọn pẹ̀lú iṣẹ́ tá a ṣe ládìyàn tá a bá máa ṣí àápè ní àlàjá ìwọ́n bá fojú rí eré ìṣòro kan kú.
In your breakdown, you said that rates and fees will be reviewed realities with the current economic situation. And you went further to say that no new levies and taxes will be introduced. Can you clarify this further? 2. In the governor's budget speech, there's a column stating that a state investment and holding corporation company will be floated this year. There's the holdings too, and the Lagos State Industrial Development Finance Company. If you look at all these commercial ventures and you compare them, given the background that the federal government, the federal and state government have said that they would divert themselves from pure commercial activities. How do you explain this? And what specific purposes would this company serve? Thank you.
Thank you very much. The second, we have established Ibile Holdings, right? And then you mentioned the Industrial Investment Company. The holding organization is basically set up to manage all our investments in other companies. We have investments in Los Baja, Ikentex, EcoBank, and so on. And as one of our Lagos State has investment in as many as up to 20 companies. We have share capitals investment in as many as 20 companies. Before, these investments have been managed by the Ministry of Commerce and Industry. Now, we find that in line with the commercial orientation of a lot of industrial projects, we've now found it expedient to transfer the management of this investment to a company that can manage them efficiently and properly. That is, whenever there is a need to sell these investments, like any individual would do, Ibile Holding will sell those investments. When there is need to acquire other investments, other share capital, Ibile Holding will do this. So Ibile Holding is similar to dual investments. I providing the overall umbrella for government investment in commercial operations. That is, government is not, going to continue as a corporate body to operate directly in investment area. No, in other development projects, either commercial or industrial. We are moving away from that, which is in line with the general policy in the nation. And that is why we set up this organization. The other one, the Industrial and Investment Company, is basically an outfit, again, which government is setting up to assist small-scale industrialists. And the idea is that we found that from the ministry end, we've not been adequately able to address the needs, either technically, financially, or in terms of other requirements of the small-scale industrial sector in the state. And that is why we've decided to establish an outfit, a company, to be managed and run by experts, not civil servants, experts in this particular area who can provide the necessary management techniques, advice, and who operate within the private sector to ensure that the small-scale industrialists in the state, they are better off, than hitherto. I think this is the rationale for setting up, those companies. They do different. They perform different functions, and that's why we set them separately. Now, the other question you asked was that it appears there was a contradiction between what I said, that there will be no new taxes and new levies, and the fact that you said we've reviewed our rates. There is no contradiction. The review of rates is something that happened in the last 2 years. We review our charges, what we call the user charges. In other words, when they go to the high court, it's also affidavit. For example, people are used to paying 1 naira. Now, I believe the charge is going up to 5 naira. Similarly, there are other services provided by government where people are paying rates which were fixed about 20 years ago and so on. These are rates which we review. My colleagues here from Lands, I'm sure he'll be able to tell you areas where they've reviewed so many rates. Equally, my colleagues here from Environmental and Physical Planning, which review our rates, survey fees, planning fees. I believe these are areas where we reviewed the rates over the last 2 to 3 years. And therefore, the point we are trying to say is that these new rates will have to be pursued vigorously in the coming year. While generally, when you talk of levies or taxes, they are not taxes. We do not intend to change the position as it is. I hope I am satisfied. Thank you.
Education. Thank you, the Director General on behalf of the Lagos State Government. My questions are very few, but they are particularly related to education. Unfortunately, we couldn't have a copy of your breakdown. Otherwise, one would have been able to pick on figures. But from the Governor's budget speech and your analysis of today, I believe that I can say confidently on behalf of Lagos State parents and teachers that the government is actually welfare oriented. And for this, we thank you very much. I had expected to hear what the government proposes to do regarding classroom accommodation. There have been some prototypes there are many schools without prototypes. There are many dilapidated classrooms all over. I would have liked to hear specifically how many prototype buildings we are going to have, as it is the desire of the Lagos State Chief that all schools should have prototype all over the state. Now that primary education goes to local government, we are very happy. We are very happy that they will be able to concentrate, but we are equally very worried as to whether they will afford education the appropriate prominence it deserves. Now, we want to know, sir, what you are doing about the accommodation problem of DS1 of 1991. That's all over the schools. We are expected a crash program to install classrooms, as this was not there before. Then the environment we talk of as being for the state. What of the school environment? Most of our schools have no toilets, no water, no electricity. Even the prototype ones, most of them don't have water and electricity. We have wanted to hear what you have. The same thing on school furnitures, teaching equipment. I mean, the analysis will have shown us what were allocated to this, because 1990 was not so good.
Yes.
In most of our schools. We having teaching equipment, some were bad, and not having even money for jobs and other teaching aids. Then we are going to hear from you, sir, what better arrangement the government has regarding these textbooks and stationery, availability of it. We know there was this task force on textbook which had to be closed down for whatever reasons and the inquiries. Then the bulk purchase scheme. To the PTA, we have not found the bulk purchase system very effective regarding the purchasing of books by our children. In most cases, we go to these bulk purchase centers with a list of books.
Yes.
We hardly find 2-3 of the books there. And whereas at the various book selling points, these books are available there after they have been purchased bought. Maybe because we call it bulk purchase by the booksellers, who then sell to us at the price. We will want a better arrangement for this, and we will want the government to regard the question of books as something that needs your subsidy for some parents. We need proper subsidy on this, and we need a better arrangement to make sure that our children get books. Then, sir, the question of science education, which is now the priority of education all over the world.
Yes.
Most of our science laboratories have no chemicals. Most of them are not even well installed. We want to know what allocation you have for this. Then we have the question of flooding in schools. This has to do with environment. As soon as rainy season comes in, some schools are immediately put on holiday. We want to know what you are doing about this. Then there's the question of security, fencing of schools, gatesmen, protection of our children from incursion of criminals, mentally deranged people, and so on. There are a lot of our schools that are not fenced and are not properly manned at the gate. It's a result that some of these students just find their way out. Then we talk of Introtech, sir. I wanted to hear what provision you have. Most of the Introtech equipment are rusting away in most of our schools. The PTAs are trying their best. The cost of installing these Introtech equipment is very, very high in most cases.
It appears you've prepared and your own separate budget on the education in the state, which you brought to our attention. I thank you very much, and it's a reflection of your commitment to the educational development of the states, for you to go into all these areas, which I agree with you are the real important areas under under education. As for the provisions, well, by the time you get the write-up, you will see all the various provisions there, and by the time the main budget comes out, the document is there, you will always get all these provisions there. What I can say right now is that I'm aware we provided a total of 133.7 million for the capital programs of education in 1991. That I can tell you. And some of those areas, the provision of commercial subjects, equipment, typewriters, the fencing, security, another equipment and so on. Those are areas which government will be tackling in the course of the year. I'm aware that we are going to purchase a lot of typewriters for commercial subjects. We've discussed that about a month or so ago, and that will come up. But let me take it in the way you mentioned it, and then go one by one. What's government doing about classroom programs? Well, if you look at page 20 of governor's speech, the second paragraph there covers the ongoing classroom construction, which we will endeavor to complete this year. I read from there about 80 prototype blocks of 1,340 classrooms currently under construction will be completed in a year. In other words, that gives you an idea what we're doing. The prototypes, basically majority of, well, the 80 is for prototypes, but there are other type of classrooms which we are constructing depending on the locality and so on. But as you know, our focus has been on the prototype and the replacement of the functional classroom. We will continue along this line. But one appreciates that given the different conditions and environment, we then adapt the type of classroom we construct to suit the particular area. GSS 1 1991, the crash program. I can tell you with confidence that we've awarded contracts for the construction of those classrooms. We're aware of the need for additional classroom for GSS 1 1991, and the construction of those classrooms is now going on well. We've given the contractors some money to assist them to buy all the necessary materials, giving them quite a considerable amount of money to purchase all these materials, the building materials, so that they should have no problem in ensuring early delivery of this classroom, both in respect of the traditional schools as well as the model colleges. The construction of additional classroom facilities, the model colleges too, we've awarded the contracts. I believe DG Works, I believe I'm right in that area. I'm aware of we've done that. Delivery would be, I believe, anytime from now. The school environment, water, electricity, and so on, we will address them. As you know, our educational problems are not what we can overcome overnight. As in the past, we'll be devoting probably the largest share of our budget to education.